Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 884. Well, I am very excited today to introduce you to a budding new author. Caitlyn Henderson is joining us from South Central Kansas, and she has got quite a story to tell. She and her husband, Jake, plus their 3 children, they are doing what needs to get done to be able to maintain Jake's 5th generation farm and to keep it going and to keep it in the family. And she's got quite a story about how she and Jake met, how he ended up taking over his family's farm, and where it has all gone from there. She interweaves her faith as well as her limited knowledge of farming and what it really looked like when she married a farmer into this story, and I think you'll enjoy hearing it quite a bit. We're going to get it started for you right now. Caitlyn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and it's interesting how this has come about, and we'll get into all of that here in a moment. But anybody in agriculture, anybody in farming with a story to tell, I like to tell it. I like to hear about it, and I like to learn about what other people are doing and what their experiences are. So I am excited to speak with you and find out what's going on. So let's do this. I kind of touched on this in the introduction, but the way this came about is that you are in the midst of writing a book. You're almost done, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the book is done and edited. We are just waiting on release.
Waiting on release. Okay. And that's coming around January. Is that right?
Yeah. Right now we're set for January 19th is going to be the release date.
Okay. And so the title of that book will be Faith, Farming, and Family. And we're going to have you back on the show about the time of the release to remind everybody about the book coming out. So somebody from the publishing company reached out and said, "Hey, we want to introduce you to Caitlyn and talk to you about having her on the show." And I misread the email, and so I did not realize they wanted the episode to be released in January. But I got to look, in prepping for the interview, I got to looking into the book. I looked at your Facebook page, started looking at what you've been doing, and honestly, there's a lot there that's very interesting to me, and I think it would just be fun to profile you on the show right now, introduce you to my audience, and then when it's time for the book to come out, we'll have you on again. So I do appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Okay. Well, let's introduce you to everybody. So where are you?
So we are south of Anthony, Kansas. So most people kind of know where Wichita is.
Uh-huh.
We're about 45 minutes southwest of there. We're about as south central Kansas as you can get.
Okay. So just north of the Oklahoma border then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just about 5 miles north of there.
Okay. And tell us about your family and about what you guys do.
So my husband is Jake, and we have been married, it'll be 9 years next month, and we've got 3 little farm kids running around. We've got 2 boys and a girl, and they are 8, 5, and 3. So our hands are full, and we live out here on the farm. I think Jake is the 5th generation to actually live in this farmhouse and be on this ground.
Oh, wow.
And we raise wheat, soybeans, cotton, milo, and then we run a cow-calf herd. And then we also, for the last few years, have done custom harvesting, and that really took off. So last year, Jake was gone for a solid 8 months, minus about 10 days, sprinkled in from started harvesting wheat in Texas in May, and we got home on Christmas Eve. We finally got done with the corn harvest in South Dakota that we just thought was never going to end.
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to talk more about that too. I mean, obviously the title of this show is Off-Farm Income, and it's all about how people use entrepreneurship, small business to go off the farm to generate income to support what's going on the farm. It sounds like you guys are in the exact same situation there.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, we really diversified.
Yeah, I will say. So row crops and cattle and a business that is taking him away for almost the whole year.
Yeah.
Wow. That's unreal. Okay. That is, obviously I profile businesses all over the country that are in agriculture, but the scope of that custom harvesting business and the time away is it's pretty phenomenal. It's pretty phenomenal.
It's last year was definitely a challenge. He had to go to Canada for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And me and the kids don't have our passports, so we couldn't go visit. So we went a solid six weeks, and that was rough. That was pretty rough. This year, the weather has kind of helped us. So he's actually home. He's out in the shop working right now.
Okay.
So he's been home a lot more this year. And then in about 3 weeks, we'll leave to go to Nebraska to start on fall crops up there.
Okay.
But it's a challenge.
So are you staying at home while he's gone, or are you traveling with him?
I go back and forth.
Okay.
So while he's gone, me and the kids, he'll normally take one of the boys with him, and then I'll stay home, kind of take care of the animals here, help take care of the cows, work on, there's a lot of stuff I need to be home for the writing and getting ready for book release and everything. So me and the kids really go back and forth. We try to go with him as much as we can, but sometimes we just have to spend the time apart and keep our heads down and plow through until we can meet back up again. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So now I was reading in your bio, it says small town, raised in a small town, married a farmer, and have been learning about farming and what the farm life is about. So tell us about how you grew up.
So I am not shy at all about admitting that the transition to farm life was not a pretty one. Like I said, I grew up in town. It's a very small farming community, but that doesn't mean you know about farming.
Okay.
And married a farmer, and the hours and the stresses, and I think it was just a couple years after we got married that the huge drought hit, and markets start crashing, and I just was like, what did I get myself into? You're never home. We're losing money. Like, who wants to do this? And you throw kids into the mix, and it was a rough transition, and I'm pretty open about that it was hard, and there was a lot of fights back in those days, and I hear this from a lot of other women on the farm, that they always have the argument with their husband of, why do you make the farm more important, or why is the farm your top priority? And really, it was my own mindset shift of, the farm is our family, so when we made it a family thing, it was no longer the farm was the first priority. It was the farm was our family, and our family was the farm. And that really kind of just changed my mindset and how I viewed the farm. And now there is no other way I would rather live. I'm like, yes, farming is still hard. The hours are still hard. It's stressful. But when you really make it a family operation, there is no other way that I would want to live or raise our kids.
That's interesting. So let me ask you, when you said yes and you were going to marry a farmer, what were you expecting?
Well, I was expecting, when you're dating, tractor rides are fun. You're in the buddy seat and you're going to check cattle, and it's just fun and romantic. And then you kind of think it's going to stay that way. But then once you get married, it's kind of like, oh, you're in your own tractor disking up ground. And it's like, okay, you go feed those cows. And it just gets a little less romantic. But, it works out, and it's a team operation, and you just kind of learn to love it.
Yeah, that's funny. I've had, so we've got a couple things in common. I've got an anniversary coming up in about 26 days. So late September wedding, and sounds like you were an October wedding. And then my wife and I, we've had this discussion a few times. Our farm is not as big of operation as yours, but a few times where I'm like, you go do that, I'll go do this, so we can get this done and we can be efficient. And she's like, well, why don't we work together? And I'm like, I'm looking at it from my perspective, like, because this is a one-man job. This is a one-person job. That's a one-person job. why would we work together when we've got so much to do and we're trying to get finished up? So yes,
Yeah.
I've had the same discussion.
Yeah. And I do have to say, like, since getting ready for, the book and all the things that I have going on kind of now with my business, which, it really is a full-time job.
Sure.
I don't help on the farm as much as I used to. I mean, we're always together and I always am, doing what I can. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't do as much as I used to. And that's just where we're at right now. But, it just is kind of also that season we're in of we're both just working through trying to just keep going. And that's just where we're at.
Okay. So this is interesting too, because you grew up in a very small town surrounded by agriculture. So I'm assuming that the town itself probably lives and dies with commodity prices, with weather, with agriculture. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then what brought your family to that town, and what did they do for a living?
So I was born and raised in this town.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom was always a stay-at-home mom with us, and my dad is a field tech with Foley Caterpillar equipment. Okay. So he's a mechanic on big machinery. And so I actually met Jake. He did not grow up in this town, even though the family farm was here.
Okay.
His parents had gotten divorced, and so he actually grew up about an hour away.
Okay.
And then when he was like fresh out of high school, his dad was killed in a car accident. So he came home to take over the farm at 18 years old. Well, it's just crazy because Jake's dad and my dad were best friends in high school.
Okay.
And so his dad was even in my parents' wedding, and there's pictures of Jake at my parents' wedding because he's a couple years older. Oh, wow. But we had never met until I was a senior in high school. And then when he moved home, we met, and I had planned on going to K-State and getting my vet degree. I wanted to be a large animal vet, like out in the Flint Hills. Okay. And then I knew we were going to get married, and I was like, well, he's never leaving the farm, and apparently I'm never leaving my hometown. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can't wait to leave my hometown, but I love it. I'm glad I'm here.
That's interesting that you were going to pursue becoming a large animal vet. So, I mean, a lot of people want to go and become veterinarians. I started out that way in college myself, so I completely understand that. But with you not being exposed to that stuff, why were you drawn to large animals?
Honestly, I think it just sounded cool. I mean, I liked the idea of really being in agriculture. I took a lot of those classes in high school. Mm-hmm. I was in FFA, even though we weren't on a farm. Like, it's such a farming community that you kind of get a taste of it, even if you're not all the way in it. But we do laugh now because I had never really been around cattle, but wanted to be a large animal vet. And the first probably 3 years that Jake and I were together, I hated our cows. I was so scared of them. I would climb a fence if they even looked at me the wrong way. So we kind of laughed. I'm like, I don't know if that would have been a great fit after all. So that probably played out best.
Yeah, it's tough to be a large animal vet when you don't want to get anywhere near the cow.
Yeah. Yeah, probably wouldn't have worked too good.
Okay, very cool. Now, so what is the name of the custom harvesting business?
Just Henderson Harvesting.
Okay, Henderson Harvesting. And so what brought that about? How did that come about?
So I think it was probably about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was when wheat just hit the floor. We were just coming out of that few-year-long drought, and things had been pretty rough on the farm. And we got a call from our banker one day saying, you're probably going to be on the chopping block to get the farm sold. And, I had been on the farm for, I think, 6 years at that point, maybe. Mm-hmm. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. So trying to imagine how my 5th generation farmer husband took that was just, that's devastating. And we kind of just said, what are we going to do? Are we going to work like crazy and try to save it? I mean, which sounds impossible, when the bank is right there. How do you climb out of that big of a hole? Mm-hmm. And we said, well, we don't want to give up. If we lose the farm, we want to go down knowing we did everything we could to prevent it. Mm-hmm. So Jake started working crazy hours, like 4 jobs, driving a semi, just doing anything and everything he could.
Mm-hmm.
And we really just kept praying, like, okay, God, if you want us to keep this farm, you just like show us how. And
Mm-hmm.
it was not a couple weeks later, Jake had delivered some cotton burrs to a farm, like 30 minutes away. And he got to talking with the farmer. And we knew of this guy. He was a really big custom harvester. He's been harvesting for probably 30 years. And he said, I'm kind of looking to retire, and I want someone to take over the crew. And we had been custom harvesting for just like neighbors for the last several years, just never leaving home. But Jake had always wanted to custom harvest. Like, it's kind of always been a dream of his, but he didn't know how that would ever work. And so we got hooked up with him, and really it was just this entire operation. Just overnight, our entire operation changed. We went from, being home 24/7 to now you're gone for 8 months and running and taking over an entire custom harvest operation and, buying a new combine and all this support equipment. And it was a very big risk, but it was ultimately what saved the farm and, got us out of that hole. And, it's been challenging, but our family kind of loves it at the same time. It's hard when we're not together, but, we have gotten to see amazing places across the country, and our kids have the coolest stories to tell of, places they've gone. And it's just, it's pretty crazy how it all played out and how quickly it just did a 180 on our operation.
Wow, there is a lot to unpack there. You guys, there's, as you know, there is a wide variety of different types of farms and farmers and people that call themselves farmers all throughout the United States. I use that term to refer to myself, but by no stretch of the imagination have I gone through what you've gone through to maintain the farm, and nor do I operate on the same margins or with, I'm assuming, the bank's involved because you're getting operating loans and the farm is the collateral for that. And that is, I love this lifestyle, and that's what this show is all about. But the depth of investment and risk that you guys take for this, I mean, there is no greater example of how great a lifestyle this is, based not on words, but based on your actions, what you and Jake are willing to do to stay in this lifestyle. It's really an amazing thing when you really start looking into people in agriculture, people in farming, and what they do to be part of the lifestyle. Oh
yeah, for sure. It's, a lot of people don't understand it, and it's really hard to explain why we love this way of life so much. It's like you almost just have to feel it. It's so hard to explain, and I get why people don't always understand, but that's really what I try to do with my writing, is just bring them in and make them feel like they're here at the farm.
Well, in my tagline for this show, I describe farming or agriculture as the ultimate lifestyle business, and that's really what it is. Agriculture and farming is a lifestyle. Because if you put the hours, the study, the intelligence, the research, the risk, all of that into another endeavor, you could make a lot more money doing something different. And so it's all about the lifestyle, and certainly you are illustrating what a full-time farming family in the United States goes through and what they put on the line to do this. And there's a lot of people that don't appreciate that and don't truly understand it. And I commend you guys for doing it. And now I wanted to ask you about this. This is a theme that I've kind of been talking about on this show since 2015. And so I've always been involved, or at least keeping abreast with what's going on in agriculture. So I had a little break. I got my degree in ag. I grew up in a farming town. Went off, got my degree in ag, worked on ranches, did all that stuff, and then I left ag for like 15 years and was a police officer for 15 years, and then I came back. But during that 15 years, I was always keeping abreast of what's going on in agriculture and always reading and dreaming and waiting for the day that I could find my way back, get my own place. But once I started the podcast and once I started talking to people about ag all over the country, and I started getting engaged on social media, which you are as well, I started seeing something out there. And it was, I don't know if it's resentment or if it's just jealousy, but there are people like me who did not inherit a farm. I'm not a fifth generation farmer, right? So I had to go buy a farm, and therefore my farm's smaller and it won't support the family by itself. And so I had to do that. That was my path. But there's people out there who've been on my path where they have to go and they have to buy their own place, or they're trying to figure out how in the world will I ever make this happen because there's so many obstacles to entry now. And they'll look at somebody like Jake and yourself, and they'll go, fifth generation, this land was there 100 years ago. It's been passed down and passed down and passed down, and it was given to you. And boy, if somebody would just give me a farm, I could make it. I could be a successful farmer. And there's this division out there. And then I interviewed, starting back in 2015, I interviewed a few people who were multi-generational farmers like your husband. And I started understanding that, and I was not one of the people that resented or was jealous of multi-generational farmers, but I was seeing that all over the place. And then I started realizing that people who want to farm and they're trying to figure out how to make it happen, they're not feeling anything close to the pressure that somebody like your husband is feeling to be that fifth generation and have the bank come and say, this is it. Mm-hmm. You're on the chopping block and this is it, and it's going to end with you. And I can't, I've talked to multiple farmers now who have been close to or in the same situation as you and Jake. And that family legacy, for it to end with you, it had to weigh on his shoulders, I would think.
Oh, for sure. And I know that this isn't the case for every farm that's inherited or, multi-generational, mm-hmm. but with ours, and I know Jake's okay with me saying this, mm-hmm. when his dad was killed and he took over the farm was in a lot of debt. Mm-hmm. And when Jake inherited the farm, he inherited over $500,000 of debt. Mm-hmm. It was, and I think, when you talk about people having resentment, that, like I said, not every farm is this way, mm-hmm. but with ours, it was like he was handed this farm, he was inherited this farm, but he was also inherited the debt with it. So, you're starting to full-time farm yourself or taking over the farm full-time, mm-hmm. and you're doing it already in so much debt, mm-hmm. that, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize too, when they think you inherited a farm, that some farms you inherit the debt too. And sometimes mm-hmm. it's a lot of debt. So that is a good thing that, people should talk about.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And I don't think that's ever been brought up before, but you inherit, well, I suppose that in a lot of cases, farms are passed down with a transition plan. But mm-hmm. in Jake's case, not so much. There was a tragedy that was unexpected that happened. And he got it right in the state that it was in when mm-hmm. that moment in time occurred. What time of year was that? Was it during growing season?
It was a week before harvest.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Wow. It was. So Jake graduated from high school, and then I think it was the end of May, and then it was a week later, I think his dad was killed, and it was not even a week after that they started harvest. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Wow. So the community around you, I mean, obviously that's a crisis point. It's a week before harvest. He's still processing the loss of his father and dealing with those arrangements. How much did the community help you out at that point in time?
So I didn't know him then, but I think he has said that they had combines show up and mm-hmm. and help them, which is, you see stories about that
sure.
all the time. And it's just really cool. And I think really a testament to the farming community mm-hmm. and how they can kind of rally around people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an incredible story. Wow. And I'm sure it's covered in detail in your book.
It is.
It's got to be part of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is.
So with you so busy with the book, with Jake being gone so much, how does the farming get done? How does everything get done there at home?
So especially last year, we really changed our operation to mm-hmm. kind of more revolve around the harvest season of what we're planting and when. We do have like a hired hand that helps us because I don't have time to take care of the cows 100% of the time.
Right.
And so we do have some help with that, but we really have kind of transitioned our operation from, we're not doing as many crops as we were.
Okay.
We're still doing some, but now our focus is kind of more on our cattle.
Okay.
Growing our cow herd, kind of doing rotational grazing, cover crops, that sort of thing, which, well, I remember last year we called our banker and we said, are we doing something wrong? Because we're sitting here at our dining room table trying to figure out what we're going to plant, and we cannot pencil a profit on one crop. And he laughed and he goes, no, you're just in the same boat as everyone else. Like this year, he goes, he's like, none of us have been able to put it on paper and make profit. And so we were kind of like, okay, that's how it's been the last few years. So we had kind of been leaning towards focusing more on our cow herd anyway. And that was just kind of the push to do it. And it fits in easier with Jake being gone on harvest. You know, I can run the tractor. It's not my forte. I mean, I can do it, but it's much easier for me to go out and check the cows, make sure everything's good, than it is to, you know, go plant however many acres, you know.
And well, you've got 3 kids as well, right? So you're not herding cows, you're herding cats. I mean, you've got you've got kids running around. Okay, very interesting. Well, I think we probably could already deduce this just listening to your story. But what inspired you to write the book?
So this really started probably about 7 years ago. I had been working in the office of our local co-op after we had our first son. And I had worked there until he was about 2 years old. And I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And we were kind of in the position where we thought we could. Okay. So I had quit my job to stay at home. And I hadn't been home for more than probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I just knew there was something I was supposed to be doing. I was like, I'm antsy. There's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what. And I had just been praying and praying about it. And one night I called my dad. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And not only is he my dad, but he's an elder at our church and just so wise. So I called him and I said, Dad, I know this is crazy, but I feel like God's telling me I'm going to write a book or write books. I'm like, but I don't write. I hated English in high school. I was like, that's not right. And my dad told me, he said, why don't you start small with a blog? And I was like, well, I guess I could. And the next day I started my blog. Cool. And then, you know, it was, I think 4 or 5 years later, we signed the book contract and it came. But when I started writing, it was really just telling what was happening on the farm or, you know, milestones that the kids were hitting. It wasn't anything that anyone else wanted to read. You know, it was more for me to look back on. Sure. And then I started seeing all these other farm families struggling. You know, I'm in some groups on Facebook that are for, you know, farm wives or women in agriculture. And, you know, the market started crashing. And I just kept seeing this repeating pattern of people who were struggling. And I really just felt like God was telling me, stop telling them about you and tell them about me. So I really kind of changed how I was writing, and I just brought our faith into it. And, you know, it really, I kept writing about the farm, but I was writing about our faith in the farm, or, you know, how we have faith even, you know, in these struggles on the farm and things like that. And that was when my writing just took off, and I started having all these followers who had nothing to do with agriculture. And they would message me and be like, I don't live on a farm. I live in, you know, Seattle or wherever. But they were like, it's really cool to hear about your way of life, but still walk away with these, you know, biblical lessons or this encouragement. And so that was really, and that's what the book is. It's every chapter is a different biblical lesson, or, you know, it's full of scripture and our faith, but the stories in each chapter are stories from the farm. And that's what everyone I talk to, they're like, that's really cool that we get to hear about this way of life that, you know, we'll probably never live. But at the same time, we're walking away, you know, either stronger in our faith or with encouragement or, you know, with a little push to, you know, chase your dreams or whatever it is. So that's really how it all started.
That is great, man. That's wonderful, and I know that voice. I have no idea how I wound up doing an agricultural podcast. I mean, I do. I can reverse engineer it and go back now, but that moment where this is what I chose, that was something that was in there wanting to get out, and I can't explain it any other way than the way you just did. That's what I was supposed to do for some reason. And so that is great. Well, I am very much looking forward to having you back on the show after when the book is coming out around January 19th, 2021.
Yep.
It is Faith, Farming, and Family. For now, Caitlyn, if people who have been introduced to you through listening to this show, if they want to read your blog, they want to know more, where can they find you?
So the title of the book is actually the same title as the blog. Okay. So the website is faithfarmingandfamily.com. And then on Facebook and Instagram, I'm also Faith Farming and Family. So pretty consistent across the board. Just search for that and you'll find me somehow.
That is very, very good branding. Well done. Yeah. Okay. And makes it very easy for people. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes for today's episode. And it has been an absolute pleasure meeting you and getting to know you and your family story, Jake's story, really incredible story. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you to Caitlyn Henderson for coming on the Off-Farm Income Podcast today and sharing that wonderful story with us. We look forward to speaking with her again in January of 2021 when the book is going to be released. And as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.